Mark.
Mark.
Thank you.
Mark.
Thank you.
Mark.
Mark.
Time out.
Time out.
He knows.
Time out.
You guys are good.
Time out.
It went off. You're good.
We're good to go?
You're good to go.
All right. It's good to
We
have a
apologize for the stream drop, so you guys are ready to go.
All right, here we go. First of all, I want to thank all of you for being here today to help us honor, celebrate, and remember our fallen astronauts. It's especially special today to do so with our Israeli friends. I can't tell you how much it is a privilege to be here with you today. Thank you for being here. Let's give them a hand, please. It's my honor to be here as the mayor of the city of Titusville. But it's also my honor to be here as the proud son of a dad who gave his entire career to the space program. Like so many of you, back in 1965, our family was uprooted from St. Louis and came to actually Cocoa Beach for the first year, and then here. And my dad worked his entire career with the space program, was proud to do so, loved the space program. I love being here because I feel like I'm part of the space program. So I'm very honored to be here as the son of a space worker. I'm also proud to be here as a part of the Space Coast family, a place and a family that has and always will be a part of the space program's good times and the very tough and sad times which we recognize today. Through it all, though, we are a Space Coast family, and we are proud to be part of the space program and that family. Today, we remember some of the very important astronaut members of our Space Coast family. Each and every one of them are heroes. They're heroes to you. They're heroes to me. They're heroes to our family, and they're heroes to our country. I'm so glad that you're here today to help us celebrate our heroes today and remember them for eternity. God bless them, and God bless the United States of America. With that, this is the hard part. I don't want to mess this up. I'm going to introduce, first of all, a couple dignitaries. I'm not sure who he announced, who he didn't, but Chief Lau is over there. Raise your hand, Chief. Thank you. Police Chief. Fire Chief Hoskels. Very hostile. I don't get his name right ever, so he knows who he is. City Manager Larice. Council Member Jolynn Nelson. Am I forgetting anybody? Raise your hand, don't feel bad. All right, so I appreciate you guys being here. I think it's an extremely important day, not only to worship, that's the wrong word, but to honor our fallen heroes, but to do it as a family. I have the privilege to introduce, and I do not have, but he comes across to me, I got to meet him briefly. He comes across to me as a guy who, I don't need you to say a lot about me, and he's going to come up here, and I'm very proud to introduce Israeli Consulate in Miami, Counsel for Administration, Mr. Eli Gill.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for inviting me here today to speak in honor of Colonel Ilan Ramon in the 20th commemoration of his historic and tragic STS-107 space mission on board Space Shuttle Corrigan. Ilan was and still is a hero and inspiration not only to the Israeli but throughout the world. He was a true hero, graduation as a fighter pilot from the Israel Air Force Flight School in 1974. Among his many combat missions throughout his brightly career was in 1981 when he took part of the Operation Opera, eliminated the nuclear reactor that Iraq was building. This carried an important message. Ilan, a son of Holocaust survivors, represents the all Jewish people that was now powerful, independent, and able to defend ourselves. He was chose to be the first Israeli and the Jewish astronaut to fly with NASA. As a payload expert, a tremendous honor and accomplishment that will never be outdone. I could speak all day about Elon's accomplishment and incredible career, but these things pale in comparison to his unusual character. Elon was a devoted husband and father, and true inspiration to his wife, children, and parents. After his passing, Elon was awarded the U.S. Congressional Space Medal of Honor, and is still the only non-American to be awarded the prestigious honor. His life and legacy brings extreme pride to the state of Israel and the Jewish world. He led the path and set the foundation for others, such as Eitan Stibbe, to become the second Israeli astronaut who we had the pleasure to attend his takeoff last April. Elon's death was a great loss for Israel and the Jewish community. What Elon's life was projected cut short, his memory and legacy continue to inspire generations of young Israelis to follow their dream and to make their mark on the world. During his space mission, Rona, Elon's wife, sent him an Israeli song, Atishma Koli. Will you hear my voice? I am sure Elon hears our voice now. God bless the States and God bless Israel.
Thank you very much. Came all the way up here from Miami, and we got this beautiful sunshine from Miami. You brought the weather with you. You'll see him over at the American Space Museum reception later this afternoon. That brings us up to keynote speaker, right? First, I want to bring up Mr. Terry White. He has an important message that I want Terry to share with everybody. Terry worked as I call him the shuttle garage manager over the orbital processing facilities, and he's become a good friend of the American Space Museum, a good friend to all of you space workers. Terry? Terry White.
Yes. Yeah, for those of you that don't know me, like you said, Terry White, a second generation space worker, and my son is now a third generation, so he's in the Army Space Command. So, but at any rate, I was fortunate enough to be one of the people that started at the beginning of the shuttle program here at Kennedy Space Center, and I was loaned to California to work original build of Columbia, as some of the other faces in this audience were, but I see people out here that work with me from STS-1 all the way to STS-135. So thank you. But at any rate, I also worked original build of Challenger in California. But the message I have today, I received several years ago. At the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Center, they have an event where you could have lunch with an astronaut. So I was a volunteer out there answering questions about the space shuttle program. So at lunchtime, I'd go have a cup of coffee, listen to what the astronauts was telling the guests, because it would help me answer questions that guests had up around Atlantis. So I was there one day, and astronaut Steve Smith was speaking. I was sitting in the audience. He's giving his presentation to several hundred people in the auditorium, and he just stops in the middle of a sentence and looks out at the crowd, and he goes, "Even astronauts have heroes." And everybody looked at him, and he goes, "My hero's sitting right there." And he pointed at me. He said, "Terry White is one of the people that worked so hard here at Kennedy Space Center to make sure that our flight was ready, it was safe, that it took us to orbit, did its mission, and brought us back home safely." He said, so astronauts consider the people here at Kennedy Space Center their heroes. So after the luncheon was over, I stopped to thank him, and he says, "Oh no." He said, "It doesn't end there." He says, "Anywhere you go where there is a gathering of people that worked on the space shuttle program, you are tasked to pass on that message to them, to thank them for being heroes." So you've all been thanked. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. Jumble my notes here so I don't get too far off script here. It is my very honor to introduce our speaker, astronaut, earthling, and artist, Nicole Stott. In my 5 years at the American Space Museum, she's one that I've gotten to know very well. And you heard about the hardest working person in show business. This is the hardest working person in the astronaut corps. She is outreach every week, it seems, doing something, and a world traveler to Europe. Nicole Stott wrote this book, Back to Earth, What Life in Space Taught Me About Our Home Planet and Our Mission to Protect It. And I love this book. I love all astronaut books, but she intertwines her astronaut bio in with what she learned coming back from her 103 days in space to learn about the global climate problem and solutions to it. And I love this book. Nikki knows I do, and we tout it all we can. Live like a crewmate, not like a passenger. That's what we tell people from her book. Her experiences include 103 days in space as a NASA astronaut on the International Space Station, and she was on the final mission of Discovery, STS-133. I think it's also cool that she has got the perspective of our planet 18 days underwater at the Nemo 9 mission. It's Key Largo, just down the road from here. She's very passionate about art, has a foundation that celebrates art, healing, and space. And without further ado, I'm happy to call my friend Nicole Stott.
All right, can you hear me? I want to say good afternoon and also comment on what a beautiful day we have today for this gathering of community, and to thank everyone for coming out, and to especially thank the American Space Museum for including me here today in this memorial. I am so honored to be here with all of you today to honor our 17 friends and heroes that were lost in the Apollo 1, Challenger, and Columbia accidents. I'd like to begin by sharing a beautiful Jewish memorial tradition that I recently learned about. Some dear friends of our family, the Potters, produce really wonderful documentaries. And their most recent one is called Tracks, Stumbling Stones of Amsterdam. And it's about the laying of Stolperstein in Amsterdam to honor Holocaust victims. Stolperstein, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, means stumbling stones. In this case, memorial stepping stones that are laid in front of houses on the main walkway along the Grand Canal in Amsterdam. And instead of being something you would physically stumble on, they're beautifully polished so you visually stumble on them, to call attention to the names or name engraved on the stone. The hope is that the people who stumble on these stones will take the time to read and say the names, and maybe even polish the stone. The underlying theme of the film and the stones is really significant, reminding us of the power and importance of remembrance. Laying these stones and the response of those who stumble on them is a way to bring to life the Jewish tradition that says, as long as a person's name is still being mentioned, they continue to live. I want to thank everyone here today and those that will be reading all of the names of the Apollo 1, Challenger, and Columbia crews to keep them present and alive with us here today and every day. It's difficult to believe that Wednesday will be the 20th anniversary of Columbia. That 2 days ago was the 56th anniversary of Apollo 1, and that yesterday was the 37th anniversary of Challenger. These are dates that, whether or not you're part of the space community, These are dates we remember. We remember where we were, we remember the disbelief, and then what followed as we accepted the reality of the tragedy. But most of all, like all of the most significant things in our lives, we remember the people. And now we remember and memorialize their lives and the ultimate sacrifice they made for all of us. These sacrifices are the hardest reminder that space exploration is risky. But while our friends that we remember today understood these risks, more importantly, they also understood the rewards of the work we do in space. All were committed to the human spaceflight mission, where everything we're doing off the Earth is ultimately all about improving life here on the Earth. All were part of something bigger than themselves. I remember when I was a young engineer starting my NASA career at KSC. It was a time of lessons learned and of lifting each other up so we could get back to flight after Challenger. I remember learning lessons that I have applied to everything in life since. Some of those most important lessons were shared by a dear friend and mentor of mine, and to many of us here today, Jay Honeycutt. Jay made sure that all of us new young engineers understood that safely flying in space was a really complex thing to make happen, and that our job was to solve the complex problems. And to do that, the first step is to believe there is a solution to every problem, and to always work with the approach of here's how we can, not why we can't. One of the most enlightened lessons of my life. And in all that complexity of flying in space, later as an astronaut blessed to fly on both the space shuttle and space station, I was really pleased to discover some of the compelling simplicity in it all too. Something I think our friends of Apollo 1, Challenger, and Columbia all understood. How flying on a spaceship with a crew and orbiting our planetary home 16 times a day at 17,500 miles an hour, the view out the window is like a glorious visual Stolperstein, a planetary stepping stone that in the most awesome and wonderful way reminds us of who and where we all are in space together. The simple and compelling reality of things like we live on a planet. We are all Earthlings, and the only border that matters is that thin blue line of atmosphere that blankets and protects us all. And being reminded that one of our most important roles is as crewmates, not passengers here on Spaceship Earth. I think all 17 of the beautiful Earthlings we are honoring today knew that by behaving like crewmates, not passengers, we have the power to create a future for all life on Earth that's as beautiful as it looks from space. So, I'd like to wrap up now with a traditional Jewish phrase I learned from the Tracks documentary that I started out with today. May their memory be for a blessing. I'd like us all to consider again the names and memory of our Apollo 1, Challenger, and Columbia friends and heroes. May their memory be for a blessing. I hope we all leave here today remembering that their lives and the way they lived them is a blessing for all of us. Remembering them is a blessing because their lives mattered and continue to matter in this world, even if they're no longer in it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicole. You now have from a distance? Nope. Oh, okay. We'll now have placement of the wreath. Al, take it away.
As we prepared this afternoon to place our memorial wreaths and flowers, I want to take just a moment to remember some heroes that we've lost in the past 12 months. Astronaut James McDivitt of Gemini 4 and Apollo 9 left us on 13 October. Walt Cunningham of Apollo 7 recently departed on January 3rd. Another astronaut who almost made it to the moon, but they canceled the Apollo program just before they were able to send him. Don Lynn, who did make it up on STS-51, passed also on January 3rd. January 23rd. As Mr. White was saying, there's always somebody behind us. For every pilot, there's always 15 engineers to put them into space. Well, for each astronaut, there's a backup. And this year, we also lost one of our backups. Ludwig von der Berg, who was a backup payload specialist for STS-51B, was one of our Dutch-born astronauts, left us in October. Stanley Norbert Kozlacki was backup for STS-47, left us in October also. We've also got a new breed of astronaut coming up. And we also lost one of those this year. From Spaceship One, which flew in 2004, on September 15th, we lost William Binney. At this time, we'd like to invite the mayor, Nicole, Eli, and the rest of the delegation from Israel to come forward, please. Everybody got all their pictures? Jill?
Singing from a distance is Joe Brown. She's done this so many times, we're gonna have to get her a new CD, I think. That's a very meaningful song for this meaningful event. It's at this time that those of you who've been selected to present flowers, please come up over here by Al. That'd be Bob Seek, Charlie Mars, and Troy Post.
Actually, they can stay in their seat as you introduce them. Just
Okay.
meet the cadet here with the flowers.
All right.
It's a little warm today to have everybody
Anybody
stand.
desperately needing some water, we got a few around here. Please don't be shy. We don't want anyone to have an issue here. And we've got lots of friends here to take care of you if you have a medical incident. Okay, Kiki, I wanted to put up there first, before we do this, you want to say, let us honor our fallen heroes today. We're here this afternoon of January 29, 2023 to honor and keep alive the accomplishments of 17 astronauts who lost their lives in tragedies that ironically occurred decades apart, but during the same week of the year. Those are, of course, the Apollo 1 fire on January 27, 1967, the Challenger launch explosion on January 28, 1986, and the Columbia reentry tragedy on February 1st, 2003. These 17 space pioneers we honor today, they exemplified the best that America has to offer in courage, ingenuity, and persistence. They all knew the risk of space flight, and they savored the rewards of being an astronaut. And they sacrificed their lives in the pursuit of knowledge and exploration for all mankind. We're also aware that the space industry has experienced the loss of life among those workers building the rockets and spaceships for America. Some of those are honored at our nearby Spaceview Park in its separate pylon over there. And the Astronaut Memorial Foundation honors those astronauts killed during training on the beautiful Space Memorial Mirror at Kennedy Visitors Complex. We hold them all dear in our hearts. As you reflect on each astronaut's brief biography, keep in mind that these brave explorers of the unknown represent a spectrum of cultures, races, and genders. Men and women, Asian, African American, European, Christian, Jewish, Buddhist. This is the melting pot of America. And their lives were taken from us while they were literally reaching for the stars. The 17 astronauts are forever remembered in America as their names adorn buildings, schools, streets, parks, planetariums. They're honored with statues, scholarships, and institutions. Their names are given to craters on the moon, asteroids orbiting the Earth, and even hills on the planet Mars, Columbia Hills. Today we humbly honor the crews of Apollo 1, Challenger STS-51L, and Columbia STS-107 here at Sandpoint Park in Titusville, Florida, less than a dozen miles from where they rode their rockets into space. We honor them not because they tragically died. We celebrate each of them because they lived, and their lives helped change the world we live in today. Today, first, we'll honor the Apollo 1 astronauts with a very humble, very unique twist. It's my honor as a journalist to know Mr. Hugh Harris, sitting right over here, who spent 35 years in the NASA Public Affairs Office telling the story of America's space program. I've asked him to please read the tributes today about our Apollo 1 astronauts, Gus, Ed, and Roger. Hugh Harris was the third director of NASA's Public Affairs Office, coming behind the groundwork of Gordon Harris and Chuck Hollinshead. Hugh became known as the voice of NASA in those early shuttle years, best known for his calm professional commentary on the progress of the launch of the mighty Space Shuttle stack. But Hugh's real contribution in NASA was directing the outreach programs to the general public, news media, students, and educators, as well as business and government leaders. Hugh's also proud of his role as the creator of the Chronicler Hall of Honor at the Media Press site. Well, American Space Museum is honored to have Hugh Harris participate each month on our Monday through Friday video podcast called Stay Curious on YouTube. Many of you have participated on that little video program, and we certainly appreciate how you've embraced that. Well, this month we surprised Hugh with a birthday cake. He turned 90, folks. Yes. Hugh blew out the candle on our live video broadcast, and I asked him, Hugh, did you make a wish? And he said, yes, I did, Mark. I wished I could be around for your 90th birthday. Well, that was pretty sweet for both of us if that happens. May I introduce my honor, the one and only Mr. Hugh Harris with our Apollo 1 heroes. First, Virgil Grissom is acknowledged by Bob Seath, who will be presenting that. Take it away, Hugh.
As Mark said, we're here to really celebrate the lives, not the deaths, and of the astronauts of Apollo 1, and the gift that they gave to the future of all of us. It's also important to recognize that they were all real people who used their time on Earth to make a contribution to all of us. The first group to recognize is the three members of the Apollo 1 crew, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee. Tragically, they died on January 27, 1967, during a flash fire inside of the spacecraft as it was awaiting launch on top of a Saturn 1B rocket. The new Apollo Command Module was undergoing an important plugs-out test on the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station Complex 34, just 10 days before the scheduled launch. Their deaths undoubtedly saved the lives of many others, as the electrical short circuit that started the fire resulted in thousands of changes and modifications to the Apollo spacecraft. Those changes made it possible for 24 others to travel successfully to the moon and 6 other Earth-orbiting missions during the Apollo Skylab and Apollo Soyuz missions. Let us remember these intrepid explorers. Gus Grissom was one of the original Mercury astronauts. He flew the second suborbital mission in 1962, and I'm old enough to remember that. He commanded the maiden flight of the two-man Gemini with the late John Young in March of '65. Gus was the shortest of the Mercury 7, but a fierce competitor and sometimes a joker. He was born in the small town of Mitchell, Indiana, and joined the U.S. Army Air Force in World War II. He earned a Bachelor of Science degree from Purdue University and went to the Air Force and the Korean War flying an F-86 Sabre. Captain Grissom was a test pilot when he was one of 508 applicants for the new NASA Space Pilots Group. In April 1959, he and 6 other top pilots were announced to the world as America's Mercury 7 astronauts. To digress slightly, all the new Mercury astronauts were competitive, and they bought and frequently raced speedy Corvettes off hours. Of course, not a lot on the Cape, because people didn't watch. keeping careful track of the wins and losses. During wartime, you remember, fighter pilots had symbols of the planes they shot down painted on their aircraft. And after beating Alan Shepard in one such race, Gus surreptitiously had Alan's Corvette emblazoned with 4 Volkswagens and 4 bicycles. Gus Grissom was 40 years old when he died, and he rests at Arlington Cemetery in Washington, D.C.
Okay, yeah. The next presentation, honoring Ed White, is Charlie Mars. Charlie was a NASA manager, many projects. I fondly call you the Godfather, though he tells me he's not killed anybody. But Bob Seek has told me some stuff. Yeah, I'm first, he says. And I forgot to mention Mr. Bob Seek has only launched 57 of our wonderful shuttles in his career. Thank you, Bob, for all that you've done. You. Next up is who you doing next? Ed or we just did Ed? Ed's right here.
Next, we honor Edward H. White II, who is being remembered with the flag. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Ed White was the first American to make a spacewalk on Gemini 4 in 1965. The images of him soaring in space for 23 minutes are still frequently seen today and is considered one of history's most memorable spacewalks. He also gave America a new word, extravehicular activity, which is really 2 words. But and when the EVA was over, Ed White said to the world, "I'm coming back in, and it's the saddest moment in my life." White was born in San Antonio, Texas, and excelled in sports. And he was an All-American track athlete who just missed qualifying for the Olympics. At the University of Michigan, White earned a degree in aeronautical engineering. Among his classmates was Buzz Aldrin. White had seen an article about the future of flying in space and persuaded Aldrin that an advanced degree would help them get into the new world of space flight. They attended graduate school with Jim McDivitt and Jim Irwin. Next, White was selected to attend the U.S. Air Force Test Pilot School at Edwards Air Force Base, and he was one of 9 men chosen as part of the second group of astronauts in 1962. Fittingly, he was named the next 9. Within an already elite group, White was considered by management to be one of the most highly skilled astronauts, just like his best friend in the 16-member astronaut corps, Neil Armstrong. Ed White was just 36 when he was buried at West Point Cemetery in New York.
Thank you, Hugh. We next recognize Roger Chaffee, Mr. Troy Post, board member of the American Space Museum. Troy is very involved in the economic development of Brevard County. Thank you for all you do, Troy. Mr. Roger Chaffee.
Born in Grand Rapids, Michigan, Roger attended college on a Navy ROTC scholarship at Illinois Institute of Technology, and then graduated from Purdue University. Like Gus Grissom, he became a seasoned Navy lieutenant commander and became one of the youngest pilots to fly top secret photo reconnaissance trips over Cuba Altogether, he flew 82 missions over Cuba. Chaffee joined the NASA program in 1963, one of the 14 chosen in the third group of astronauts. Although a rookie in space, he spent years supporting the Gemini program, most publicly as Capcom on Gemini 4 and Ed White's spacewalk. Smart, teachable, and very likable, Roger was on the fast track for future fame as a moonwalker. Chaffee was 31 when he died and interred at Arlington National Cemetery beside his Apollo 1 commander, Gus Grissom.
Thank you, Hugh. Thank you very much, Hugh Harris. Still have the job. Thank you, my friend. Now we celebrate the Challenger astronauts of STS-51L Space Transportation System. If you didn't know, the 5 meant fiscal year 1985. 1 minute was launched from Kennedy Space Center at Vandenberg,
I'm gonna
which
switch it and
Charlie
select it.
Mars was working on
But
getting
that
Vandenberg
picture
ready for the Air Force.
is the picture.
And the L is just kind of A, B, C, D. Accountants wanted it that way, so that was glad that they went back to the numbers. Presenting for Mr. Dick Scobee will be Mr. John Tribe. Hold on a second, John. Just let me get the intro Challenger here. The 25th launch of the Space Transportation System had the flight number 51L. The mission was designed to deploy a satellite to study the approaching Halley's Comet and to inaugurate the Teacher in Space project. NASA learned too late that it was just too cold to launch that freezing January morning, and despite some objections at 11:39 a.m., Challenger was launched anyway. A joint in the right solid rocket booster failed, a spurting flame ended the flight 73 seconds after launch, and America was shocked by the loss of the 7 crew. Everyone had heard of the school teacher, Christa McCullough, who was chosen over thousands of applicants who answered the call from President Ronald Reagan to put an educator in space. Other civilians were to follow. Hopefully, people like CBS newsman Dan Rather, a musician John Denver, artists, writers, thinkers, all wanted to go to space on our space truck. Those dreams all ended that Monday morning of January 26, 1986, along with hundreds of millions of dollars lost in orders for the satellites that were to be deployed out of the massive cargo bay of the shuttle. President Reagan was to give the State of the Union address that night and was going to talk to Krista and the other astronauts from the Capitol. Instead, the president was on television at 5 p.m. from the Oval Office, soothing the sorrow of a nation that mourned, saying, quote, "The crew of the Space Shuttle Challenger honored us by the way they lived their lives. We will never forget them, nor the last time we saw them this morning, as they prepared for their journey and waved goodbye and slipped the surely bonds of Earth to touch the face of God." Unquote from President Ronald Reagan. Today, John Tribe is going to honor Francis Dick Scobee with the flower being placed. John, thank you, one of the Apollo and shuttle workers that we owe a lot to. Dick Scobee was the commander of the mission, having learned the ropes as a pilot on STS-41C in April 1984 aboard Challenger. He was destined to be one of the great commanders of the shuttle era. Scobee was born in Clay Elam, Washington, an outdoor haven. Enlisting in the Air Force in 1957, Dick served as a combat pilot during the Vietnam War, earning the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Air Medal, and other decorations before becoming a test pilot and eventually an astronaut in 1978 as one of the 35 new guys and girls. They were the first class since 1969, 9 years. So that was very exciting time. 51 L crewmates who were also part of the 35 new guys were Ellison Onizuka, Judy Resnick, Ron McNair. Miss McBride, you were in that class too, weren't you, sir? Scobee served as an instructor pilot for the Shuttle 747 carrier aircraft, the experimental X-24B lifting body, the F-111 Aardvark, the gigantic C-5 Galaxy. You get it, Scobee could fly anything, including this so-called brick that was the space shuttle flying in space. A lieutenant colonel in the Air Force when he died at age 43, Dick Scobee is buried at Arlington National Cemetery. Now, Dick Scobee's son Richard, who's a lieutenant general in the Air Force, led the military flyover, the pre-game ceremony of Super Bowl 30, which was played on January 28, 1996, the 10th anniversary of the disaster. Next, we remember Michael Smith with a flower being placed by Tom Patton. Tom is part of our Flag Memorial Committee. Thank you, Tom. Got Michael Smith there. Was a Navy captain and a rookie pilot on the Challenger. Born in Beaufort, North Carolina, he received his aviation wings in May 1969 at Naval Air Station in Kingsville, Texas. He had a tour of duty in Vietnam, flying A-6 Intruders, and he was assigned to Attack Squadron 52 aboard the aircraft carrier USS Kitty Hawk. Smith was selected as an astronaut in the NASA 1980 Group 9 and was chosen to pilot STS-51L. He was also simultaneously assigned a future mission that was going to take place in the fall of '86 as a pilot, so he was actually training for 2 missions. Then he would be in a position to be a shuttle commander, and I'm sure he'd been a great one. What an exciting future Michael Smith had in our shuttle fleet. But he never completed either mission and is buried in Arlington National Cemetery. He was 40 years old. Next, we're going to honor Ellison Onizuka with Mark Conklin. Mark has been involved with our museum because he's the husband of our director, Karen, and a great Rotarian. And you can't, we're just glad you have a big truck to move stuff on there. But El Onizuka, what a wonderful person this human being was. He was born in Kalikia, Hawaii, became the first Asian American in space when he served as a mission specialist aboard Shuttle Discovery STS-51C, flying in the month of January in 1985. This was the first top secret Department of Defense mission. Lauren Shriver was its commander. And it was 3 days, no, Lauren was the commander, I think Matt was. And Shriver was the pilot, right? There you go. That was his 3 days in space. A quick doing something for our country's defenses and get back down. Onizuka earned a master's degree in aerospace engineering from the University of Colorado at Boulder. And he's also served as an Air Force test pilot before being tagged by NASA in 1978, one of the 35 new guys and girls. Elle was on that board Challenger to deploy a tracking and data relay satellite for shuttle communications. Lieutenant Colonel Onizuka was a Buddhist when he died at age 39. He is buried at the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific in Honolulu, Hawaii. Next, we honor astronaut Ron McNair and Nana Lester. Thank you. Again, a wonderful member of our Flag and Memorial Committee. Ron McNair was an accomplished saxophone player who had planned to record a sax solo during the Challenger mission. It would have been the first original piece of music recorded in space. In 1986, of course, on a cassette tape, if some of you remember what that was. When Ron was 9, he refused to leave a segregated library in his hometown of Lake City, South Carolina, until they allowed him to check out books. Today, that library bears his name. After graduation from MIT, receiving 4 honorary doctorates and a score of fellowships and commendations, Ron McNair spent his free time getting a little exercise, achieving a 6th-degree black belt in Taekwondo. He became a staff physicist at the Hughes Research Lab in Malibu, California. When he was selected in 1978 as one of the 35 new guys out of a pool of 10,000, he was elated. He flew on the STS-41B aboard Challenger in 1984 as a mission specialist, deploying a couple commercial satellites like the space truck was designed to do. McNair became the second African American in space behind Guy Bluford and the first of Baha'i faith to fly in space. He was buried at Restlawn Memorial Park in his hometown of Lake City, South Carolina at age 35. There are more than 30 parks, buildings, schools named after Ronald McNair across America, including one just 20 miles to the south here in Rockbridge, Florida. Next, we honor Judith Resnick, Candace Cyberling. We'll do the honors. Candace was a personal childhood friend of Judy Resnick. We're so glad you're here. She is most here to honor her friend. Born in Akron, Ohio, Judy was the first Jewish American in space and the first Jewish woman of any nationality to travel in space. That was the maiden voyage of discovery in 1984, making her the fourth woman in space. A flashback to the 1990s, folks. Judy was among the millions of women who had a crush on actor Tom Selleck. And she took his photo and other mementos of the TV show Magnum P.I. with her to space. This woman was super intelligent. A child prodigy, Judy Resnick's life was being planned as a concert pianist. And in 1966, she was the only woman in the United States to get a perfect score on her SAT college exams. And only the 16th woman to ever do it. She turned down the School of Juilliard of Music and earned an electrical engineering degree from Carnegie Mellon University. Oh, you know, that's a pretty good school too. And then a PhD from the University of Maryland. Judy was working for RCA as an engineer on NASA military projects when she was recruited by NASA at age 28 and was chosen out of 8,000 female applicants to be one of the first 6 women astronauts among the 35 new guys. Losing her life during her second shuttle launch at age 36, Judy Resnick is interred at Arlington National Cemetery. Next, we honor Gregory Jarvis, Carrie Murphy-Fuller. Thank you, Carrie. And we honor Carrie's husband over at Space News Park, who was one of the workers who lost their life during the shuttle. The mentally problem during maintenance, I guess. Anyway, Gregory Jarvis is being honored today. Born in Detroit, Michigan, Greg earned a bachelor's and master's degree at State University of New York and a master's degree from Northeastern University in electrical engineering before joining the Air Force and eventually going to work for Hughes Aircraft. Now, he worked on several satellite design projects and was selected in 1984 to be an astronaut for Hughes' satellites in an agreement with NASA. This was a pioneering astronaut position as a company representative to go up on this space truck to troubleshoot any satellites with problems. You've got the guy that built it right there. But Jarvis was scheduled on 2 previous flights before Challenger. He got tangled up in politics of fate when he was bumped from 2 space flights by 2 politicians. Utah Senator Jake Garn bumped him from 51D in April 1985, and Florida U.S. Rep Bill Nelson bumped him from on 61C. In January 1986, that mission with our current NASA administrator landed just 2 weeks before the Challenger launch. Jarvis died at age 41. His ashes were scattered in the Pacific Ocean. Finally, of the Challenger crew, we honor Krista Corrigan McCullough, being remembered today by students from David and Savannah Astronaut High School. Born in Boston, Massachusetts, and a social studies teacher at Concord High School in New Hampshire in 1983, Krista became a hero to school children everywhere in America. She was going to be NASA's first teacher, and it was the role Krista felt she was born to play. Turned on to space exploration by the Apollo program, she once told a high school friend she wanted to drive a bus to the moon. In 1984, President Ronald Reagan announced the Teacher in Space project, and McCullough beat out 11,000 applicants. NASA hoped that sending a teacher into space would increase public interest in the space shuttle program and also demonstrate the reliability of spaceflight at a time when the agency was under continuous pressure to find financial support. Krista was also planning to conduct 2 15-minute classes from space. The lessons were to be broadcast to millions of school children via closed-circuit TV. At age 37, Krista is buried in Blossom Hill Cemetery in her hometown of Concord. For the 35th anniversary of the Challenger tragedy, in 2021, the U.S. Department of Treasury issued several $100,000 $1 silver coins in commemoration of Christa McAuliffe. Okay. Next, we honor the Columbia astronauts. The 113th launch of the Space Shuttle program was out of numbered sequence for this mission designated as STS-103, and it had a beginning that led to its end. Aboard OV-102, that's Columbia's tail number, were 7 astronauts who collectively were nicknamed either the Flying Escargot or the Flying Sardine. As the matriarch of the fleet, when Columbia blasted off Pad 39A, just 13 miles from here, foam debris from the external tank hit the left wing and punched a fist-sized hole in the leading edge. The damage was suspected on the ground, but not seen by the crew or verified from space. A perfect 16-day microgravity Space Lab mission ended in tragedy when the fiery entry ate through the damaged wing and destroyed the spaceship south of Dallas, Texas, over Louisiana. The 7 astronauts who lost their lives were another snapshot of diversity and ambition on the American landscape. They were ironically the last shuttle mission that didn't help build the International Space Station. But their contribution to macrogravity science is the bedrock for experiments on that fully functioning space station that has been doing 22 years continuously occupied, including by our astronaut Nicole Stott here. And ironically, their patch is the only one out of 135 shaped like a space shuttle. Let us honor today these beautiful Earthlings. We remember them. Rick Husband is being remembered today by Mike Leinbach. No, I take that, sorry there. Steve Lloyd of the American Space Museum do the honors. Steve is with the company All Points. And a lot of great things are going to happen with that company down the road. Rick here was the commander of STS-107. He was the pilot of STS-96. Discovery, which went to the space station for 10 days in June 1999. Being a one-time pilot and then a one-time commander, this was really a unique thing. Rick was born in Amarillo, Texas, and earned a degree in mechanical engineering at Texas Tech University. Husband began a career in the Air Force that led to test pilot school, where he worked the bugs out of the F-4 and then all 5 models of the F-15 aircraft, Eagle aircraft. That would have been a dream job. He was selected in 1994 in a group of 1523 astronauts. They were tagged the Flying Escargot by the previous crew that was chosen that got to choose their nickname. They were the Flying Escargot because 2 of the members were ESA French astronauts. A man of deep faith, on the last request form that astronauts fill out before each flight, Rick left his pastor a personal note that simply said, quote, "Tell them about Jesus. He is real to me." Husband's wife Evelyn wrote a book in 2004 called Higher Calling. And in it she said that God knew this tragedy was going to happen even before he created the earth. Gone at age 45, a great commander of our space shuttle era, Rick Husband, is buried in Amarillo. Next we have Mike Leinbach, honoring Willi McCool. Mr. Leinbach launched the last 37 shuttle missions and spearheaded the recovery of Columbia that he writes about in a book. And they'll be having some anniversaries at the beginning of the week where the recovery took place. And that in itself is an incredible story. William C. Willi McCool, born in San Diego, California, and obviously the best name ever for an astronaut pilot. And he lived up to it with his talent. He was a talented naval aviator and then a test pilot at Pax River, Maryland. He flew more than 24 aircraft and 400 carrier landings. Selected as an astronaut in the 1996 group, the Flying Escargot named them the Sardines, because there were 44 of them, which I believe is the largest class ever. Willi specialized in shuttle cockpit upgrade issues for the astronauts' office. Very involved in the glass cockpit, getting away from all those toggle switches. A new generation of astronaut, though he loved the Beatles and Imagine by John Lennon was one of his favorite songs, he thought it was cool that Mission Control played the song Fake Plastic Trees from left a wife and 3 sons and is buried at his home in craters. They call it Camp McCool No Polar Squadron. That is quite an intense, intimidating squadron there. Next, doing the honors for Michael Anderson is Stephanie Sherby on our board of directors at the American Space Museum and in all points. Fifth and last exchange of an astronaut on the Russian space station Mir in January 1988. He was born in Plattsburgh, New York, but grew up in Cheney, Washington. Graduating from the University of Washington in physics and astronomy, he earned a master's degree from Creighton University while in the Air Force, specializing as an instructor and reaching the rank of lieutenant colonel. Chosen by NASA in the Group 15, less than 3 years later, he was in space on 89 and Orbiter Endeavour. On his second space flight in Columbia, Michael Anderson was payload commander, in charge of more than 80 experiments conducted by the Space Hab inside Columbia's cargo bay. Michael sang tenor in his Houston church choir. He reportedly told his pastor, quote, "If this thing don't come out right, don't worry about me. I'm going on to a higher power," unquote. Anderson is also buried at Arlington National Cemetery at age 43. Our next Columbia astronaut is Kalpana Chawla. And when I asked how to pronounce her name, Bob Cabana told me she just wants you to call her KC. Her name Kalpana means imagination, and she was born in Karnal, India, the youngest of 4 children. She grew up with a passion for science and aviation, was earning a bachelor from Punjab College, a master's from the University of Texas at Arlington, and a doctorate from the University of Colorado in aeronautical and aerospace engineering. KC secured a commercial pilot's license and a certified flight instructor's license, and she loved tailwheel airplanes and flying acrobatics. KC's first flight off the planet Earth was on STS-87 in 1997, when she became the first Indian woman to fly in space. An inspiration to women from all nations. She died at age 40, and her remains were cremated and scattered at Zion National Park in Utah, according to her wishes. In October 2020, Northrop Grumman honored her with the Cygnus cargo ship SS Chala to the International Space Station. Pardon me? Oh, I apologize for that. Jane Hodges, NASA Public Affairs Office. Sorry, Jane. Throw something at me.
Yeah.
I can barely
Public Affairs
read this as
Good
well.
one of them.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for a little bit of cloud cover there as well. David Brown is going to be remembered by Barbara Rathbone, a warbird. Barbara? There you are. Of our wonderful, beautiful Valiant Air Command Warbirds Museum. Great partners with our Space Museum. David Brown was a rookie astronaut. Everyone called him Doc, and why not? He was the Operational Navy Flight Surgeon of the Year in 1986. That in that itself is a great resume, let alone wanting to be an astronaut. And Doc was the only flight surgeon in a decade that NASA had chosen for pilot training. So boy, you wanted him on a space flight with you, and he certainly would have been destined for some great expeditions on the ISS. He was born in Arlington, Virginia. Doc Brown was hooked on flying and being a surgeon. A graduate of William and Mary, and got his doctorate degree at Eastern Virginia Medical School. Partly how he put himself through college was working at a circus. He was an acrobat, a unicyclist, and a stilt walker. And from what I've heard about him, he's been very good at all of those things. A very fun man. Brown joined the Navy and was soon flying the F-18 Hornet and the A-6 and the T-38. He was selected in the 1996 Group 16 of the Sardines, and at age 46 is when he lost his life and buried at Arlington National Cemetery. Laurel Clark is being remembered today by Norm Rathbone. Norm? There you are. Thank you, Norm. Also representing the warbirds in our museum, the Flag and Memorial Committee. Laurel considered Racine, Washington, or Wisconsin, to be her hometown, and she received a bachelor degree in zoology and a doctorate in medicine from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. She joined the Navy and continued her education at the National Naval Medical Center, then became involved with the National Undersea Medical Institute. And this just fascinates me about her. She became involved training Naval SEALs performing medical evacuations from U.S. submarines. That experience got Laurel selected as an astronaut in 1996. She would have been perfect for the 5-month or longer space station expeditions. Laurel Clark experienced the Earth from the ocean to orbit. During the Columbia mission, she emailed friends and family saying she was busy in the lab, but, quote, whenever I do get a look outside, it is glorious, unquote. As Laurel conducted experiments during the 16-day mission, during one she watched a butterfly emerge from a cocoon and put in her notes, quote, life continues in a lot of places, and life is a magical thing, unquote. Navy Captain Clark was 41, and she also is interred at Arlington National Cemetery. We now turn to Israeli astronaut Ilan Ramon. Nadav, where are you at, Nadav, up here? This gentleman is why we're doing this today on Sunday, to honor him so his community could honor him. So Saturday is their Saturday. Had a lot of great words from the rabbi. And many of you, that was a splendid, Rabbi, your words there, and such an inspiration. I'm going to have you, yes, oh yes, yes. Yes, help you all with the, now have you do final remarks here. Of course, as we mentioned, Ilan grew up in Beersheba, Israel, the oldest of the 7 astronauts, 48. Such a war hero, This was like your country's John Glenn to us. It was a good way for people to realize the importance of this man. And in 2003, this was a very bold thing to put an Israeli astronaut on an American shuttle. There was lots of security. And as we mentioned, his notes came back. The rabbi told us were so damaged and so forth. And so I'll have you gentlemen. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Put the flower on there. Yes. Okay. Now I'll have you do a parting remarks, but on the and then I'll have some parting remarks. But Elon Ramon, on the last day of his journal, January 31st, 2003, said, and I quote, "Today was the first day that I felt I am truly living in space. I have become a man who lives and works in space." And he's buried in Nahalo.
My name is Joe Zavaloni. I represent the Israeli-American community in Florida. And I first would like to recognize our great law enforcement and first responders out here. Thank you very much for the work you do. Thank you for your service to our country. It was a true honor and a privilege to work alongside America's best during the Surfside building collapse. That's where I met the Dove, where he was part of the delegation from Israel that crawled under that rubble. And there's no words that can describe the pain, the tragedy that we experienced that day, and that's what brought us together. We're here today to celebrate the life and also to commemorate the legacy, to commemorate the inspiration that 17 superheroes, that's what I'd like to call them, American superheroes. If you take a look at the American space program, it's a testament to America's might, America's dignity and respect around the world, ingenuity, intelligence, America's finest. And our community, the state of Israel, was honored when Elon Ramon, Colonel Elon Ramon, was invited to take part in this very important mission. I want to touch just on a few highlights about Colonel Ramon. Colonel Ramon was in the Israeli Air Force. We like to call him the Israeli Top Gun, if you will. You know, everybody watched the movie Top Gun. We grew up on it. Operation Opera took place in 1981. There was a country that vowed to annihilate the state of Israel. They wanted to accomplish in 6 minutes, God forbid, what Hitler managed to do in 6 years. They wanted to send over a nuclear missile to Israel and to get rid of all the Jews there. Elon Ramon understood that. He understood the threat. Elon Ramon grew up on the values that Israel and America share us together. Israeli Americans have a very special bond. We're two countries that are best friends, best allies, and like one great Prime Minister of Israel said, Israel can always defend itself by itself, but it knows that it will never be there by itself because America will always be there by the state of Israel. And growing up here in this country as an Israeli, I couldn't be more proud of this unity, of this bond, of this alliance. And we're here to pay respect to 17 heroes. One of them was an Israeli, just like me. It just proves that in this country, you could be anything you want. You can grow up and accomplish anything you want. Doesn't matter where you come from, whether you're a woman or a man. Doesn't matter what religion, faith, doesn't matter where you're from. You can do it right here in this country. This is why the two countries will always remain best friends and allies. And America, Israel will always have your back, no matter what. I want to tell you a story about Elon Ramon. When he flew over his F-16 that you see here, this is the actual F-16. It's got an emblem on it of a little triangle that signifies and represents the Operation Opera. There were only 8 jets that were assigned to this mission. Elon was 27 years old. He was the youngest fighter pilot. He was surgically picked out of very, very fine pilots. But when they came up to him and said, okay, Elon, you're gonna fly here and there, he says, no, I want to be the last one. And for the folks who don't know, the last jet is at the most peril. He's at the most risk. He's the last one leaving. And they said to him, why would you want to do that? He said, because I'm the only pilot here that doesn't have children. All his fellow pilots had families and children. And he said, I'm going to do this to make sure that nobody would ever threaten to annihilate the only Jewish state. And if I can do something to make sure that happens, I will be there. Elon Ramon's mother was a Holocaust survivor. She survived Auschwitz. She survived the worst of the worst evil has to offer. The kind of evil that this past Friday night, as Jews went to the synagogue to pray, a Palestinian terrorist armed with a gun walked into that synagogue and slaughtered 7 people. One of them was a 14-year-old boy. The next morning, not too far from there, in another synagogue, a 13-year-old, I like to call him terrorist, because that's what he is, shot and injured severely 2 Israeli citizens as they were walking to synagogue. Elon Ramon knew that this evil is here. He knew to confront that evil. He knew to confront it in a way that only someone with such values, I like to call it the Israeli-American values, the ones I grew up on, that we will stand to evil, we will defeat evil, because we are stronger and better than that. Lastly, the rabbi mentioned that Elon Ramon took a Bible with him to space. There was a little boy, his name was Joachim Joseph, Professor Joachim Joseph. He was in Bergen-Belsen, one of the concentration camps, the worst ones, one of the worst ones. He was a little boy just about to become bar mitzvah. At 13, it's a big deal for a Jew. You become a man. One of the things you have to do is recite your weekly prayer. That little boy was completely disconnected since he's in a concentration camp. However, there was one rabbi that happened to be in the same barrack in the same little building that he was at. And he had a tiny Torah. And he said, listen, we're going to do this. I'm going to wake you up early every morning at 3 o'clock in the morning. You're going to learn, you're going to recite, and you're going to do this. And he did it. And he recited it. And then one morning during his bar mitzvah, he was woken up at 3:30 a.m. His mother knew that this was the ceremony, was in another building because women and men were separated at the time. The rabbi sat there in the table, he had 2 candles on each side, the Torah in the middle, and asked Joachim to read the Torah. His mother, they did not want to let her in because it would put everybody in danger. She was by the window, it was like minus 40 degrees outside, and he recited it as his mother was listening to it. Rabbi Desberg came up to Joachim and said, please, you take this Torah, you're 13 years old today. You're likely to survive. I am not going to survive because of my age, but make sure that this Torah will be remembered. Make sure that it doesn't get destroyed. And guess what? Fast forward dozens of years later, Elon Ramon goes up to space, and before that, Joachim, the professor, he's a professor for physics, astronomy, and whatever else, came up to Elon Ramon and he said, this is the Torah you should take with you to space. Today, that Torah sits in the museum. Everybody can remember it. Everybody can see it. Everybody will know that Am Yisrael Chai, long live the nation of Israel, God bless the United States of America, and God bless our great country and the bond between the 2 countries. Thank you very much, and this is to honor all 17 heroes. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you. We got, what an event today. Al, we've got a few things to do. What's the next is the,
I think if I can get the sound man to work right, it's
Miss Jill? Okay. Miss Jill's gonna sing again, Wind Beneath My Wings. Al? have at this time, Rabbi, give us a benediction, please.
In the middle of a long service that the rabbi was giving, suddenly in the middle, a little boy interrupted, and he's pointing at the memorial board. And the rabbi says, "What are you pointing at?" He says, "I'm pointing at the guy who died in the service." This won't be a long benediction for sure. Not on my clock. I remember on that very great day of the launch of Columbia, we all sang together as the shuttle went up on January 16th. Very apropos to end such a beautiful and amazing service today. Amazing memorial, and thank you to everyone. Oseh Shalom b'Mromav. May the Almighty God bring peace upon the heavens and peace upon all of us, every human being, and upon Israel. And let us say, Amen. Oseh Shalom b'Mromav. Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu. V'al Kal Yisrael. V'yimeru Amen. Oseh Shalom b'Mromav. Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu. V'al Kal Yisrael. V'yimeru Amen. Oh, Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
Mark, typically at this time we do lower the flag and have our honor guard salute. But for safety reasons, because some hoodlum took our step and we don't have a ladder hanging up high enough to lower the flag. So unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it up at full staff. But we have the North Brevard Honor Guard with us here today to do our rifle salute and taps. So if you would please stand. Please be seated. On behalf of the City of Titusville, the Flag and Memorial Committee, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for being here with us today. Would also like to thank the Titusville Garden Club for the donation of the awesome flowers that we were able to put in. Last year, many of you are here remember Mark fumbling with the pictures. He kindly went to Staples and they gave us a gracious donation of these new photos. to share. So we want to definitely say thank you to them. And I'd like to end with one final thought. 6 years ago, I started volunteering across the river at the Air Force Space and Missile Museum over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Base. And I first saw the patch and logo that Ilan Ramon created for his mission. And I looked at it and I thought, wow, that's got some real cool symbolism in it. And as I was doing preparations for today, looking at it again, and I thought how impressed I was with how he incorporated his love of God, family, country, and the exploration of space. Hearing today the words from the rabbi and the other speakers who were talking about Ramon, it makes more sense what he put on that patch. And even more so, I was doing research, and I'm going to mess up the name, the Hatikva. All right. Hadassah's beautiful song that she sang. Let's put it that way. And there were some words in there that when you translate into English, and I hope the English translation works well, but it goes on to say, as long as in the heart, within the Jewish soul still yearns, and onward towards the end of the east, an eye still gazes towards Zion. Our hope is not yet lost. The hope of 2,000 years to be free people in our land. And I think about what Colonel Ramon put into his patch, and I hear those words, and I just so said to myself, that patch is what I need to give to our guests that were here today that presented the flower. So hopefully you will look at the patch, see the symbolism, and take it to heart the way I did. And again, want to thank each of you for being here. God bless you and keep you on your way home. Mark?
Thank you, Al. And I know I resonate for him. It's a privilege and an honor to be part of this today. We all want you to go to the American Space Museum and have some kosher snacks, and I even whipped up a batch of Tang for us over there. Try some Tang. I want a shout out to our team over here broadcasting this live, Marty Winkle. Marty's been my partner on State Curious for 2 years. He worked on the Grumman lunar module, was inside of all the ascent stages, looking out them triangular windows. And then he spent 30 years launching the space shuttle with the launch process system, managing about 40 people there to get the most beautiful, perfect rocket engine ever made, the SSME. Thank you, Marty, for your service here. So many of you here today. And shout out to our Trekkie Techie, Jessica Galloway, taught Marty and I, a couple old men, some new tricks how to do this Streamlabs thing. Jessica was the Employee of the Year at the school where she teaches there. Which school is that?
Stevenson Elementary.
Stevenson Elementary there on Merritt Island. We're very proud. And these are the kind of people that we have at our American Space Museum team there, thanks to Karen Conklin. And of course, Charlie Mars. So. Well, to end today, we want y'all to take home a piece of these wonderful Earthlings, these space explorers. Think of their families. Be grateful that the American space program has changed our lives on Earth for the better, thanks to the sacrifices made by these brave men and women serving our country in a truly dangerous and unknown exploration of outer space. And as a new renaissance for space exploration is upon us in the 21st century, let us not forget today's incredible successes are possible only because of the sacrifices made by these small few. Our final thought, at the dismantled Launch Pad 34 on Cape Canaveral, where the Apollo 1 astronauts died, is a memorial plaque that simply says, quote, "They gave their lives in the service to their country, in the ongoing exploration of humankind's final frontier. Remember them not for how they died, but for those ideals for which they lived." We hope to see you at the museum, and we hope to see you soon to bridge the space between us. Thank you all very much for this ceremony. See you at the museum. And we're so blessed by our partners from Israel here.